Hey, everybody, this is Calvin Williams. I'm the founder and CEO of Impruver. Impruver is a technology that helps companies to develop scientific thinking, drive a culture of continuous improvement throughout the entire enterprise. And today I'm privileged to have my good friend and fellow coach, Paul Serafino. And we're here to talk about his experience with the recent Impruver Accelerator. How you doing, Paul?
Doing great, Calvin. Good to talk with you as always.
As always. How was my introduction? Was that justice? I mean, there's so much more to unpack about Paul and what's going on behind that, but yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a good start.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So Paul, tell us about the work you do, a little bit about your business. Now, you've been a coach for some time, executive coach, in fact, and you've even got somewhat of a Toyota Kata background. So with the MEP and maybe some other places too. So give us the 90-second intro of Paul.
Yeah. So my company is called Accelerator Journey. So it's all about how do we get to our destinations sooner, and how do we move faster? How do we increase velocity of the things we do? And I learned a lot of that from production and learning a lot of the lean philosophies, lean principles, practicing the Toyota Kata as well to, kind of experiment my way to different results in a very technical engineering setting. And what I started to see is we could apply all that same methodology to personal things, the way humans work, and especially when it comes to leadership. There's a lot of stuff that, we get into psychology and mindset of a leader. There's a lot of things that people assume or they think they know to be true about themselves and about how the world works. And that affects their leadership. It affects their style, but it affects their methods. It affects their results, and ultimately their success and their fulfillment in their career. So I said, how can we experiment with the individual and kind of test our way to better outcomes that they want? And it all starts with setting different goals and really setting a destination that's got meaning, that's got, it makes them excited to really want to try to achieve that destination, because it's going to be a state of fulfillment. And then we look at what's the current state, what do they currently have in their life, what do they currently have in their role as a leader, and how can we change those things through testing and experimenting. And I guide them as their coach along that journey. And what I found is when we test assumptions and really challenge the status quo and conventional knowledge, things go faster. When we really challenge it and say, what if we replace everything we think we know to be true with an unknown, with a question, and then we experiment our way to an answer? What's going to happen? And that accelerates things. And that's why I call it, accelerated journey.
Yeah, that's powerful.
I love the lines, it's not, life's a journey, not a destination, right? Aerosmith has that song, and that's a great quote. Yep. But I kind of believe things will be a little bit different. I believe life is a series of small journeys to get to the destinations. And
that's awesome.
The faster you achieve a destination, the more chance you have to work on getting to the next one.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Paul sort of does something that is too often left off of the universe or the mindset of continuous improvement, is really get into the psychology of the improver, right? If it's especially at the executive level, is if you're the one that has to carry the torch, if you're the one that got to light the torch and get it going in the company, then everything sort of hinges on you, right? And if you're not right upstairs from a confidence standpoint, from a capability capacity standpoint, then what happens afterward is a reflection of just that. So if you didn't get a chance to check out Paul Serafino in a recent podcast on Documenting the Journey, where he goes deep into that stuff, I highly encourage you to check that out. But for today, would love to go through some questions here with you, Paul, if you don't mind. So
absolutely.
You just finished the Impruver Accelerator actually a couple of weeks ago, when you've actually started coaching your own accelerator now, which is close to finishing up. You're a unique case where it was like Paul's not even finished with the improver level, and we got to have him coaching another cohort like the next day, right? It was almost a within minutes handoff from coach E to coach on that. But and you've got a ton of experience, so I think it was very intuitive for you to be able to do that. But just curious, what made you decide to take the accelerator as a learner to begin with?
I was really I was curious, number one, how you had it set up. Like, how's it going to work as a almost like a program or a process to go through? What are the steps going to look like? How do you, how do you teach this stuff? So I had some curiosity around that. I really wanted to see how you've built it, but I also wanted to see if I could make it work for me. Can I actually use this to improve a non-standard business that's run by me and we don't make a product. There's no manufacturing, right? There's processes that I have, but there's not a lot of repeatable steps. At least that's what I thought. So I was curious, can it work in a non-standard environment, not even a non-manufacturing environment? And then also, if it does work, what's it going to do? What can I actually change? What can I improve? What things can I make better? So I had some ideas around that, but once I got started, it really took form. It took shape. So I had some more. I turned it into some specific goals, which was great.
That's awesome, man. That's a great point too, because as a sort of an independent coach, consultant type of person, you're not next to a production line where it's consistent, pumping out unit after unit. It's your world can change from one day to the next, right? And it often does. So that's interesting. So with that as a foundation, what were you trying to achieve with the accelerator, right? Because it's very much target driven, goal driven. What did you choose as a goal for this experience?
So I had just started, before I got into Accelerator with you, I had just started a different channel of marketing and of gaining clients, finding clients, attracting clients in a very different way, which is called a partnership system. It's basically reaching out to people in various industries, not just coaches, not just manufacturing people, but anybody where I thought their audience could benefit from what I teach, and then also potentially become part of my own audience or my client base. And so I was doing that kind of outreach and structuring partnerships. And so the goal I set was to grow that to a certain monthly revenue so that I'd have a repeatable system in the background of clients coming to me through partnerships was the goal I ended up settling on at the beginning.
That's smart. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So if that was your challenge, right? You probably had a number that you had set. We don't need to go into those details, but what was your first target condition and why did you set it there?
Yeah, it was interesting. My first target condition, I think what I had set it as was the number of people that I was going to be partnering with. And so I was really, the way I had it structured was one partner a week is all I thought I needed. And so I was like, oh yeah, I just gotta do this to get one partner a week. And that was a target. It was more of a numerical metric, but it wasn't a condition, right? And that's what I quickly had to change my thinking and learn, which was amazing because the coaching that comes through the Impruver Accelerator is what helped me start to think in terms of conditions and not just the metric. So I started with one, as one partner, and then what I evolved that to is what are the things I need to be doing to get to that. So, and then it became, how many people do I need to connect with? And so then my target condition shifted to more of a behavioral pattern. What am I doing each day to start to ensure that by the end of each week, I'll have a secured partner?
That's it, right? That's it. And I remember having that conversation with you and Mario. Mario was your first coach.
Yes.
And all about like, looking at a leading indicator versus a lagging indicator. Whereas, one partner a week is probably a little bit lagging. And for this accelerator, you almost got to get to a point where if you can't measure it every day, then it's probably not a leading indicator, right? Exactly. It's probably, you don't know if you did the right thing today that's going to lead you up to that thing you want by the end of the week. So, so that was awesome. That was a good learning. I think we all learned a lot from actually you and the experience with you and the other cohort members in that cohort. So, what were some of the biggest improvements that you made, and what did you learn from those improvements?
So, as part of that, getting to the condition where you can measure daily and have it be leading indicators, it was, what is my input into a process? What output am I measuring to determine if it's working, and what can I change? What I started to recognize, and you kind of helped me with this a lot, was, well, you can't go for like a minimum sort of threshold of things to do because your assumption is that it's going to yield what you want. You've almost got to just keep pouring inputs into your process in a different way until you get that output that you really want.
That's it, right?
Yeah. So my daily output had to become number of people that were in conversation with me that could potentially be a partner, which meant number of people I had to reach out to had
There
to
you
be
go.
increased.
Right.
So that was the biggest improvement, was changing my outreach techniques in terms
That's
of
powerful.
categorizing, who I would reach out to and how and when, how often.
Yeah.
So changing frequency, changing the quality of what I was doing, changing the words I would use in messaging. Those were the experiments I was running. And the biggest improvement, I think, was honestly, the biggest improvement was people who responded in a way that quickly, within a few days, we were talking about partnership.
That's awesome, man.
Was my goal. Yeah.
That's powerful, right? Because I remember that conversation too, where we were talking about like, the inputs are things you can control, right? You have control over what you put into the process, but that's not necessarily a good target condition because you don't know how effective those inputs are until you get some type of feedback, right?
Right.
And then the feedback becomes your measure of success. It becomes your, a representation of your target condition, where then it makes you question, like, okay, I put all this stuff in, I thought it was going to work, and it didn't move it didn't give me the feedback I wanted. It makes you go back and question if you got the right inputs, right? Do I need to do more? Do I need to do different? Less, whatever it is. So that was great, man. That was a good conversation too. Any other like big improvements you made? I know you made several throughout the course of the Accelerator.
Yeah, some of the biggest improvements were things that I had kind of had on my list that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
People I'm going to reach out to that I just hadn't, because I was waiting for either the right moment or different, excuses or reasons.
Good.
And through this, it was like, well, my input is, if I've got to reach 10 people per day and measure the output, which would be responses and things like that, well, I guess they're on that list. And some of the people I've reached out to are now, we're in contract, we're in agreement, we're in talks, and I think I'm going to be blowing away my my initial goal that I set, the challenge that I set for that monthly revenue from clients. I think that's going to be crushed.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I was just about to go into the next question. So what are some of the results? You sort of hit on some contracts working out. It sounds like you got some good partnerships in place. That's a great result. I think that's what you really wanted at the end of it. It sounds like the Accelerator gave you a sense of urgency to do some of those things that you knew needed to get done and really move the needle forward. So were there any other results from that you really were some big takeaways for you?
Yeah, a big one that's kind of a little less tangible, but it's helping me big time is just around what we talked about, that feedback loop,
yeah,
the inputs and the outputs I'm seeing in my own clients. And even, in the Accelerator, I'm coaching that cohort, but also the clients in my business. People really like to talk about the inputs and then measure those and use that as their stopping point for success. Because when you have 100% control over it, it becomes binary. It just becomes, did you do it or did you not do it?
That's right.
And that's really not going to advance you. It's what do you expect that to yield as an output based on your process?
That's powerful.
And when your output isn't what you need it to be or want it to be, then you look at what changes to the process do I have to make, not necessarily what changes to my inputs do I want to make, and then only check that. It's, I got to change the process and what it does with my inputs. That's an experiment.
That's it, right?
Yeah, or change the inputs too if you believe the process is working. But what I'm finding, and a big learning for me in my own experience as a learner through Impruver, was my process wasn't as good as I thought.
Interesting.
So it had less to do with the inputs and more to do with the way I process those inputs. And that's where I started testing, which is really,
and then the feedback that the process gives you right after you do apply those inputs, right?
Yeah. So that learning was really, that crystallized that learning by going through the 6-week accelerator process. It just brought that stuff into such clear light to me that I'm seeing it in others now and pointing it out, which I think is going to help them a lot.
That is amazing, man. I'm happy to see. And honestly, I would love to take credit and say I taught you that, but really, I think we learned it together.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff, we've done, I don't know, probably 10, 12 accelerators now. and every accelerator I learn new stuff.
Mhm.
I kind of want to go get those original people and put them back through and see so they can get the latest and greatest. But
Right.
no, I mean, I think we're all learning together, right? And I think as a coach, and I see you doing this too. As a coach, you're just as much of a learner as the coachee, right? You're
100%.
learning from them and they're learning from you. So it's kind of a mutually, us all being professionals, it certainly makes accelerates our own journeys. So that's
Mhm.
great to hear you say that too. So um, I'm curious to know what you like best about the process and like best about the software. Maybe start with
So,
the process. What do you like best about the
okay.
process?
What I like best about the process is how it was structured in a way that there's a lot of flexibility built in for the learners, because that otherwise there'd be less learning. So they do have to struggle. I had to fumble and struggle, but there's a structure and a context that comes with it that builds up each week, so that truly by the end you're I don't want to say you're an expert, but you've learned the process because of the way you've designed it. So that's something you should take a lot of credit for, is that it's structured in a way that it enables the learning to happen with enough guidelines. So it's kind of like the principles of the kata, the Toyota kata, are built into the improver process, which I really liked a lot, because
Good.
it gave me a framework, it gave me guidelines, but it wasn't so restrictive that I was just memorizing some things and regurgitating, So
Yeah.
that I think that was great the way that was built.
It
Really
sort
like
of
that.
made you, it sort of makes you learn, right? It makes you,
Right. Yeah.
it makes you get it and uh, sort of internalize it mentally, not just like memorize a bunch of facts, right? It's,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So the software, what do you like best about the software?
It's super easy to use. It's intuitive. I love how, and I know you've made a lot of changes, but the version that I've seen and I'm using, it's kind of the one-stop shop dashboard that
Mm,
mimics what they talk about with the storyboards or the visual kata boards. What anybody's using out there that's manual, it's kind of built right in, and that's how it looks on the screen. So it's easy to navigate. Um, I just like how it kind of just displays everything right out there in the open. It follows it's great how it follows the coaching cycle, the 5 questions, right? If you're doing your job as the learner and doing the work each week, when you're coached, when your first coach comes to the Gemba, which is the dashboard, we're doing it virtually, but all the answers are right there if you've done it as a learner. And it's great because it forces in small chunks. You can't write a ton of stuff about your target condition, because it'll just bleed off the screen, or the scroll bar disappears. So it kind of forces simplicity and specificity, which is two things I love that I think a lot of people struggle with. So
that's awesome.
that's great. The software has that built into it.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the software is a product of all these cohorts we've done with the accelerator, and me getting feedback as to how to make it easier. And I think you're hitting on something key, right? There's power in being concise. There's
Yeah.
power in making this a 5-minute conversation.
Mhm.
Makes it easy for a leader to just grab a tablet, walk out on the production floor, or walk out in the office area to their direct reports and say, "Here, I got your account up right here. Let's talk through this and let me know where you're at," right?
Yeah.
And then kind of pop off the questions, like 5 questions in 5 minutes, right? That's kind of
Right.
what it should become ultimately. So
Yeah, and I like how it fits with what people are going to be used to in the real world. I love pen to paper. I love flip charts and whiteboards for brainstorms and getting stuff quick. That's great. But at the same time, you think about especially new generations of people coming up through in manufacturing, if they're hiring people in their 20s, they're, even if they're engineers, they're operators, they're managers, doesn't matter. They've learned on tablets and iPads and smartphones. They've learned on screens that you tap and move and click.
that's right.
So you've got a tool that fits that. So there's no learning curve with, let's switch to it sounds silly switching to a whiteboard or a flip chart, but if you've literally never used one and you're 25 years old, there's a learning curve to switch to that. So
That's true.
you're kind of you're bypassing that, and maybe it's a
That's
little
true.
challenge for us older folk,
Hey man, it's
but
like it's
it
the
makes
future is
life
here.
easier. Yeah.
As you say that, I got a 12-year-old son, and he's probably 3 or 4 years from legally being able to go get a job. And if you give him a board and a dry erase marker and say, track your data here. Oh, it's gonna be some problems.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He's gonna look at you like, where do I even start with this?
Where do we
Like, what
even
am I
start?
doing?
It's like, what is this? Where's the app? Where's the app? Give me the
Yeah,
app, right?
exactly. Exactly.
It's like, yeah, exactly. They expect you to be tech ready, and
Right.
yeah, and we even price Improver at a point where it's like you can afford it. It's not
Yeah.
it's not out of the range of, it's cloud based. It's a monthly subscription. It's anybody can find enough change underneath their couch pillow to afford Improver and start going, right, start improving.
Right.
So,
And what's cool is when you learn it as you go, after you go through the accelerator, you might have to go through a second time, but you're gonna be like, okay, now I know how to write in an ROI to this into our process as our challenge
there
and
you
make
go.
money using it. So it's like you said, it's priced right that anyone can do it, and it's also priced in a way that you can, easily be talking about 10x to 100x ROI. I
Easy
feel in most
in
businesses.
days, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a concept sort of baked into it, philosophy of developing people in the flow of work. So training doesn't have to be this extra cost center that you got to pull people off their work and stick them in a classroom and teach them a bunch of stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they retain some of that. Where this is more develop people in the flow of work. So you're
Yeah.
making money while you're training people simultaneously, right? It's not two
Right.
separate activities. It's the same activity. It's just that they're using the process itself to teach them what they really need to know about the
Right.
business. So the
Right.
process is teaching them and not a teacher, per se, although you do have a coach, but the coach is really helping to tease out what the process is really trying to tell them, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately. So
Yeah, and it all works real time. It's like you said, it's not a separate training activity that happens over there. It's what are we doing real world? Like we have a person in the cohort now that I'm coaching, and they've had real world stuff happen with their customers, with their employee base, the business. It's all real world, but every time he's had to switch and adapt, I feel like the conversations he's done having with his team and with his boss are more geared towards what's our challenge, what's our target,
yep,
what can we test, what can we measure. And that's, if that's what he gets out of a 4 or 5 week process already, that's going to pay off
that's it, right?
in the rest of their business. So it's great that it's not a separate thing you go off and learn in a classroom and then it doesn't apply.
That's it, right? And what's interesting is you see him stepping up, and as a result, he's pulling people up, right? He's even
Right.
pushing his boss up to a higher level, and as a result, leadership at every level is being developed, right? People are sort of stepping up their game to try to think more in terms of results and how they can affect those results, and not just like, let me stand back and wait for management to fix it. It's like, all right. Let's go. So, all right, good. So what's next for Paul? I know you're a busy man. You got a lot on your calendar. A lot of people want your time. What's next for you?
Well, I'm enjoying being a first coach of a cohort, right? And as far as that process, next step for me is second coach, so that I can help develop first coaches, which I love the idea of that. I love how you've built that into it. Having a second coach in this process for me, Mario, that you talked about, was my first coach. Now he's my second coach. It's been great. Just some of the feedback, some of the clues he gives me, and the little adjustments he's helped me make have been huge. Just
awesome.
Not just in the accelerator, but also for me in my own business and my own coaching. I'm going, I can steal that and take it with me to use with my clients. So I love that it's this evolving development process of coaches as sort of leaders of a process, because that's what I subscribe to, and I love that.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the next logical thing for me, is second coach, and continue evolving and building my skill as a first coach. And then, within my business, I'm looking at how do I start to incorporate some of this daily experimenting and daily measurement and some of the kata style thinking for improvement. How do I incorporate that with the work I'm doing with my clients? And I'm already getting lots of good ideas for it. I'm looking at the process that I use and what I follow to lead them. When we're talking about executives and managers, it's, minimum we usually work for 3 months and get a lot of breakthroughs. And I'm seeing areas in how I'm doing it where I can shrink that, where I can accelerate that even beyond what I thought was too fast for some people.
Interesting.
I'm realizing there's ways that I can make that even faster. And not that speed's the name of the game, but if you're a struggling executive and you've got a goal in mind or a place you want to get to personally, if you could be there tomorrow instead of a year from now, that's better, right? So,
hey man, accelerated journey, right? That's what it's about, right?
Exactly. So I'm just constantly evolving how I do things, and going through this Improver Accelerator is really giving me a lot of good ideas and a lot of good clues about how I can even improve what I'm doing.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, Paul, this has been a great conversation, but all good things must come to an end. So last question, how can people connect with Paul, learn more about what you're doing, get involved in your work, and just stay connected with you?
Number one is find me on LinkedIn. Calvin and I are connected. So if you're in connection with Calvin, it should be easy to find me. Just type it in my name. You'll see I'm the lean guy turned leadership coach. So if there's a list of Paul Serafinos in your results, look for the guy that says that, and that's me. So find me there, reach out, shoot me a message, say, hey, heard you in Calvin's conversation, would love to connect, or liked what you had to say, or disagree with everything you say, and I want to have a conversation. I'm open to all of it.
Oh yeah, I get that once in a while too, actually.
Yes. Sometimes
one come in yesterday.
There you go. That ends up sometimes being the best relationship, because you don't have to agree on everything. It's almost better. I want to be challenged. It helps my learning. So either way, reach out. And if you need help and you want to see a little bit more about how I help specifically, you just check out my website. I've got a free kind of training that's on there. It's basically a recorded webinar that I walk you through some strategies that I think you can use and help yourself if you're in a manager or leadership role. So paulserafino.com, jump on there and, sign up to watch that training. And I think that's a great starting point too.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for doing this. This was great. Always a pleasure when we get together. Just your mindset and your way of thinking just puts fuel in my fire, right, to keep going and do what I do. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
If anybody wants to learn more about Paul, you've got his details. If you want to learn more about Calvin and Improver, the best place to do it is LinkedIn, of course, is a great way to connect, but you can also check us out at Impruver.com. That's IMPRUBER.com. And don't forget to check into our executive access engagement that we're working on launching in the next couple of weeks here. So looking forward to hearing from you. Otherwise, have a fantastic day. Let's get better than yesterday. See you soon.